These days, current events unfold on a dozen channels. Headlines all seem to be shouting, and good news can be as scarce as a moment to relax. So let's turn down the noise this summer, unplug just a little bit, and head to a shelter from the storms of life. The historic port city of Alpena, located on the sunrise shore of Michigan. Only a few hours drive, but miles away from the weight of the world. Nestled between a vast forest and an endless clear blue bay, where the wonders of nature are as welcoming as the local hospitality. We can explore more than 200 shipwrecks in the largest freshwater sanctuary anywhere. Count the stairs to the top of a lighthouse, or the masts that jet into the harbor sky at moonrise. Let's take a trip to the friendly, picturesque city of Alpena, a haven from the world that's pure Michigan. Your trip begins at michigan.org.
For your viewing pleasure, this broadcast of the Municipal Council meeting of Alpena is made possible by the funding provided by the City of Alpena. Thank you for your generosity.
Good evening and welcome to Alpena City Council meeting, July 6, 2015. Call the order, please.
Johnson? Here. Nielsen?
Here.
Nowak?
Here.
Sexton?
Here.
Walagora?
Here. Please rise for the pledge. Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Approval of the minutes from regular session June 15, 2015. Any issues, changes? No. Any modifications to the agenda this evening? Citizens appearing before council on agenda and non-agenda items are allowed a maximum of 5 minutes to address your concerns. If you do so, please come to the podium and state your name and address for our records. It's the only time during council meetings citizens are allowed to address council. Adam?
Paul, Planning Development Director. As you probably all know, one of mine and Jim's jobs is to really identify and try to look for development opportunities, and one of our priorities is for vacant and underutilized properties in the city. Specifically, we've been looking at sites downtown, and we've taken a number of avenues to figure out exactly what we could do with these vacant property, about these vacant buildings, and how to reutilize these structures. To that end, we've done a couple different things, but last month I prepared a grant with the Michigan Land Bank for blight elimination funds that they made available on fairly short notice. Specifically regarding the Alpena Power Building. We're going through the Redevelopment Ready Communities program, and they were doing a study for different uses for that building, and one of the prospects they had initially given was demolition of the property. Last week I found out City of Alpena has been funded for $245,000 to potentially remove that structure. We have been working with the property owner, and they have agreed to pay the $65,000 in the match. To that end, they've also agreed to donate the building to Target Alpena and give them that site. And this meets a number of our goals. Basically, one of Jim and I's goals is to really try to create shovel-ready sites. Sites such as the downtown hotel that's being built. Sites that a developer can walk in, can look at, and doesn't have to jump through a number of hoops in order to get developed. So with the awarding of this grant, basically we would potentially be able to demolish that structure and restore it to a developable lot at no cost to the city. And then it would be, at that point, it would go into the hands of Target Alpena. What this does is pretty much because we are such a built-out city, this creates a large developable lot on a very desirable location on the river. We don't have many of these sites left that are for sale. So it would create that, and the demolition instead of redevelopment of the property would open up a wider variety of development that could locate there. As I mentioned, the economic feasibility study by the RRC program had been done, and they had recommended one of their potential use of redeveloping that site. But the project they looked at, the costs they presented didn't include a lot of costs that potentially should have been included, such as facade costs. They just figured there would be grants available, which, as I can attest to going through a facade grant right now, number one, they're not easy. And number two, it would be difficult to execute, as a developer would have to line up at least 5 tenants for anywhere between 1,200 and 1,500 square feet. And they would have to keep those tenants in line where the facade grant program was going through. Right now I'm involved in one that's taken a year and a half. So that would be, in my mind, and many others I've talked to, exceedingly difficult. I personally see this as a better method that would create a redevelopment ready site that developers could come in and they could immediately utilize. I understand this has come up rather fast. It's one of those, like I said, they didn't give me much time to prepare for this grant. And I found out about this last week. We just got our ducks in a row, and that's why I'm here today and not on the agenda. So I just wanted to kind of let you know about this, and I don't know if I'm allowed to answer questions or not, but at the same point, I'd be happy to talk about that.
Yeah, ordinarily not, being it's not on the agenda. So, but we certainly appreciate your update on it, and great work, great short work. So we appreciate it, and Jim as well. So.
Just one other further update related to that. In making all this work and in working with Jim, especially as far as making a shovel ready, which is what the state is always looking at. They want shovel ready sites. Is one, if you look at the property lines, they are very convoluted on the backside of the riverside between what is a city parking lot and their property. And the two are intermingled. You basically can't access many of these parking spaces without going on Alpena Power property. So if they fenced it off, we'd lose a whole bunch of them just that way. And the Second Avenue entrance would be totally gone because you wouldn't be able to enter in at all. So what we have talked about is basically smoothing out that property line. And that will be brought to you next meeting. We're not at that point yet. We've got to do a little number crunching in that, but the proposal when it comes back will be to sell off a minimal amount of land to make the site basically more desirable by a developer because it has a little cleaner edge along that area. It's a minimal amount of, I can't remember the exact number of square footage, but it is not very big. But we will bring all that at the next meeting. I just wanted to make you aware that that's all part of this kind of project that we're putting together that we think ultimately will bear some very good fruit for downtown Alpena. So just wanted to let you know that, and all the information will be provided before that meeting to you.
Excellent. And that'll give us some time to discuss as well at that meeting. So appreciate it. Mary Beth, were you up on your way up?
Everyone looks so tan. You must have had a good weekend. I just wanted to share with you, I know I'm on the agenda later for something else, but I just wanted to share with you. Earlier this morning, I received a call with a really fantastic idea for our community, and so I'm coming to you with it, where our office is kind of doing the legwork to put this together, but we have an opportunity to create a time capsule that can be buried in the footings of the new bridge being built at Island Park. So we didn't think of it before, nobody did, but we did now, and good news is they're not done pouring the footings, so we have an opportunity. It's very fast, which is okay too, because time capsules aren't that hard. So we're putting some things together, and I wanted to invite you and anyone else in the community, if you're interested, to share an item to place in the time capsule, not big like a motorcycle, but something small that would give people an impression 100 years from now what life might have been like here in 2015 Alpena. So we're going to be collecting those at the CVB office at the Chamber of Commerce building tomorrow and Wednesday afternoon. We will be putting the time capsule together, and then we will be burying it at 9 a.m. And we would invite all of you to come. And again, sorry for the short notice, but we just thought of it.
Thursday?
Yes, Thursday, 9 a.m. on Thursday. Anyone is welcome to attend. Anyone is welcome to put anything in the capsule, as long as you get it to us before about noon on Wednesday. That's it.
Excellent.
And I'll see you in a few minutes.
Thank you very much. Okay. The consent agenda this evening. A, bills to be allowed in the amount of $570,678.04. B is fresh palate request for noise variance on August 8, 2015 from 10 till midnight. C is Michigan Municipal League 2015 election of Workers' Compensation Fund trustees. D is one mayoral reappointment to the Downtown Development Authority for a 4-year term expiring July 1st, 2019 is Jim Gulish. E is one mayoral appointment to the Downtown Development Authority for an unexpired term expiring September 16th, 2017 is Shawn Straley.
Move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Nielsen?
Yes.
Noah?
Yes.
Sexton?
Yes.
Walagora?
Aye.
Johnson?
Yes.
Okay, no presentations, announcements, proclamations, public hearings. So we're down to 11, report of officers. First we have the first reading of Ordinance 15-431, an ordinance amending Chapter 10, Animals, Article 1 by the addition of Section 12, Abandoned Animals, and Section 13, Dangerous or Vicious Animals.
This is a long one, so I won't read it unless somebody specifically requests that I do so. As council is aware, this was first presented at the last meeting, and there were several changes that council wanted to see, and so those changes have been made, been reviewed by myself and Greg, and we believe they're consistent with what council directed the last time we were here. The reason we brought this back on for first reading is because as to item number 11C, that was a modification of the ordinance as it related to animals, specifically dogs, on any parks or city property. And since that was not on the agenda last time, rather than having them on a separate timeline, we thought it was more appropriate to have them all together. That way, if council passes them all, they would all be published at the same time and would all become effective at the same time. So unless there are any other changes, this is the first reading and would come back for a second reading and for a vote up or down next time we're here.
Just a question regarding that last change about on city property. It specifically mentions dog, and the other one where our leash law kind of, did that say also dogs, or did it say animals? Because I think we should at least be consistent between those two.
Well, the second one, B, is specifically an ordinance as it relates to dogs.
It is only dogs. Okay, right. Then we are consistent.
Correct.
Okay. That's all I wanted to make sure of.
Because it says, and that's the one that wasn't at our last meeting, where it says, it shall be unlawful to bring any dangerous animal into any park or on city property, and it shall be unlawful to permit any dog to be in any park or on city property unless such dog is on a leash and under the reasonable control of its owner.
Correct.
Right. Currently it says a 6-foot range.
And I guess the question I had, and Bill, you might, maybe this will be for you or Joel or whoever. We already have an ordinance that Greg brought up last meeting that basically said that any dog on any city property must be must be leashed or under the control of the,
On a 6-foot leash.
on a 6-foot leash.
Specific.
Now, where does that ordinance stand after all this is said and done?
That would be modified, that 6-foot language would be taken out, and the language would be on a leash and under the
Is that
reasonable.
15,432?
Right, that's 11C.
11C.
Right, 433.
Oh, that's what I was just looking at.
Right, that's
Okay,
taking
so
that one and
that's-
simply modifying it to match the other language.
Okay, all right. Because I was thinking that they were two different ones, and now we were gonna have one that pretty much said the same as the other, but, okay,
So it makes them consistent with each other at this point.
okay.
So that's A, unless you want me to read, this one's kind of lengthy, so. No?
Unless you want a chance to shine, Bill.
Well, I've been practicing all weekend,
You have,
except for when I was in the sun.
so that's A. A is just A is the really long one with dangerous and vicious animals and all the things you have to do.
The
in event you
licensing
wanna
and
keep
that
one.
type of stuff, yeah.
Okay, so you want to offer to approve that one, so each one separately would be.
Correct, unless there are any proposed changes or any further modifications that council wishes to be made to that one, that will come back for second reading at the next meeting for a vote, either yes or no.
Good.
So entertain a motion to.
No, we
No.
don't, you don't need.
Oh,
to-
no, this is the first,
Yeah.
well, we did it last meeting, so it's kind of, sorry.
We're doing it twice.
I'll catch up in a minute. So the next one is B. B is 15,433, an ordinance amending Chapter 58, Parks, Recreation, and City Property, Article 3, Section 5862, Prohibited Acts, subsection 10. Am I on the right place? No, I'm sorry.
No, it's the one.
B is 1532, an ordinance amending Chapter 10, Animals, Dogs, Section 32, not to run at large, and that was a relatively short one.
Yeah, and there were two modifications suggested by council last time we were here. C has been changed to say, a dog of any breed within a city that's not on its owner's property shall be required to be on a leash. And rather than a length of 6 feet, it says under the reasonable control of its owner. So that was the change suggested last time. And then D and E kind of talked about a fence and on the property, and I think the consensus was that we really didn't need to have E. It probably caused more confusion than not, and that D seemed to cover it. So E was eliminated, and once again, this is only first reading, so unless there are any further amendments or changes, this would come back for a formal vote as a second reading at the next meeting.
Any issues with that?
Appreciate
Other
the
than me not
changes.
knowing where we are?
Oh, they're very similar.
All right, they are. Okay, and the C is the first reading of ordinance 15,433, an ordinance amending Chapter 58, Parks, Recreation, and City Property, Article 3, Section 5862, Prohibited Acts, subsection 10, which is.
This was not read last time, but it was referenced by Greg that essentially in between drafting those ordinances and coming to the last meeting, he had determined that there was already some language in there regarding dogs on city property. And it had 6 feet language in there. So we decided to propose an amendment to this ordinance as well that's consistent with the other ordinance. And so this would say, Section 10, it shall be unlawful to bring any dangerous animal into any park or on city property. And it shall be unlawful to permit any dog to be in any park or on city property unless such dog is on a leash and under the reasonable control of its owner. The former version said a 6-foot leash. And so this was intended to be modified consistent with Chapter 10, Section 32 regarding the language under the reasonable control of its owner. So this just makes them consistent with each other. And this, once again, is first reading, so it would come back for a formal vote at the next meeting, unless there are changes to this that are suggested.
And Bill, you're comfortable with the ambiguity of reasonable control?
I am. I think reasonable people can understand what reasonable control is. Unfortunately, with attorneys, there's always somebody that may argue what reasonable means, but I think you'd apply a reasonable man standard to it as well if it became an issue. And so I think Matt mentioned the last time we were here, you know, a lot of people have those leashes that go out. And so, you know, you may have a dog who's on a 12-foot leash that's still under the reasonable control, as long as the owner pulls it back in, maybe when there's contact with other people, that would still be under the reasonable control. And we all know that there are some folks that, you know, if you have a small child and you have a 2-foot leash and you have a Labrador Retriever pulling the kid down the road out into the street, that's probably not going to be considered under the reasonable control of its owner. So I'm comfortable that the language will cover most situations that we're going to run into.
Thank you.
Anything else? Excellent. Thank you, Bill. Okay, we're up to D, placement of a peace pole on the city property.
Council's in receipt of the memorandum that I did. I would not read the whole thing, but after the request by the folks regarding the peace pole, it was referred back to myself to give a legal opinion on the placement of that particular pole, but also to look at whether we needed to have some policy or procedure as to how we would address requests of this nature. And to start out with, there is, under section 5862 of our current ordinance, basically a prohibition on signs on any city property. Once again, you could probably make an argument that the placement of a peace pole would be a sign. That's probably stretching it, but you could probably make that argument. I was not able to find any documented cases in the state of Michigan that would address that particular issue. I think with the request coming through council, and if council were to approve the request, essentially you would be agreeing that the sign, if you want to call it a sign, that it was placed there with council consent. So I wouldn't consider that to be a violation of the ordinance the way you would if somebody just decided to say, let's put some political signs right down the city park. So I think that's what section 5862 wishes to address versus something of this nature. Second, Karen had a chance to do some research after I requested her to look through and see if there had been any formal policy or procedure ever adopted, and if we had other requests that had come before council or that had been approved by city staff over the years. And we found that back in 1996 there was a draft council policy statement, and I attached it to the memo, and it kind of laid out some things that were considered by staff and were to be considered by council at that time. But it was never formally ratified by council, and we couldn't really find why it wasn't ratified. It didn't appear to ever be a vote, either yes or no. It may have simply died for lack of interest at that time, or there may have been other projects that became more important and just never got to council for a vote up or down. There are some other things that have been placed at the cemetery and at SciTech Park, Bayview Park, a couple of other things, well, another one, a Civil War monument at the cemetery, and then a Veterans Memorial marble monument at the Veterans Park. So there have been other ones that have been approved by council or approved by staff over the years. There's nothing regarding the peace pole itself that would otherwise, I think, be offensive or objectionable in general. I'm sure if you asked 100 people, you'd probably find somebody that would object to it, but it's kind of hard to object, I guess, to what it stands for. So there's nothing that's highly offensive or anything that's controversial that I think council should be concerned about if it did in fact approve the request. There was one Supreme Court case that specifically took up the issue of monuments on city property, and that was a case out in Utah, and that's referenced in the memo. And really, that particular city had a policy that they would allow monuments in their parks, but only those that directly related to the history of the city or that were donated by groups with long-standing ties to the Pleasant Grove community. That one kind of took on a religious flavor because it was 10 Commandments and free speech and all that stuff. So it's not directly on point, but it was just to point out that there has been a United States Supreme Court decision, and it really said the end result of the decision is if the municipality has some reason that's I mean, a good reason. And what I mean by that is if there's some rational relation to why they did it or didn't do it, then you leave it up to the discretion of the local folks. So in that particular community, they thought, hey, people that have long-standing ties to the community or groups that had things that directly related to the history of the city, they allowed those. And they didn't allow others. So we don't have such a policy. It was just laid out that if we were to adopt such a policy, that might be a policy we want to consider, but it's not a policy that's currently in effect that would restrict council in any way. There's no particular law in the state of Michigan that says that council can prohibit a request of this nature, and there's certainly nothing that says you have to consider it either. There's been a suggestion in the past, and this is kind of a common theme sometimes when there are requests that might be considered special in nature to the city, that once you grant one request, it's hard to turn down the next request. And so there's some credence to that argument that if council allows the Peace Bowl to be placed there, there are going to be other laudable causes that come before you, and if you were to turn one of those down, it might result in somebody making the argument that council was discriminatory in terms of allowing one thing to be placed there and not another. So there's always that consideration. But certainly there's no clear-cut law that says you can or cannot do it. The last suggestion in the memo was really a suggestion based upon a conversation with Greg, and it was along the lines of the city could always accept a donation from any particular civic organization or group, and then the city could make its own determination about where it wanted it placed, in terms of what park it wanted to be placed in, whether it could be placed at City Hall, whether it could be placed on some other city property. And so if an organization wanted to donate under those parameters, then council and staff could figure out the most appropriate placement for it. If the group wanted to limit council or staff to a specific placement, then we could simply say we're not going to be bound by where you want a particular item placed, and would make a decision after the item's donated. It may end up in a place that they wanted, it may end up in a place that they didn't want. But it would give the donator of the item certainly the understanding up front that even though they requested that it be placed at City Hall, it may not get placed at City Hall. Or even though they requested it get placed at Bayview Park, it might get placed at one of the other parks. So that would be kind of a neutral ground that council could adopt if it decided to do so. So with that being said, really I think it's discretionary with council, and each one of you individually can feel free to vote whatever your conscience tells you to vote. There's no specific restrictions that are placed on you either way, either voting it up or voting it down.
Well, I don't. I think that the donated suggestion seemed to be the simplest. And I'm in favor of that. If the Peace Coalition, or not really sure. Sorry, Duffy, if that's not the right reference to your group, but if they're consider donating the pole to the city, and then it becomes our property, and we determine that we want it placed on City Hall, whether that was their suggestion or not, then I certainly have my approval on something like that. It seems pretty simple. Personally and professionally, I'm not really overly concerned with setting a precedence, only because I think the whole issue kind of, and Bill can correct me if I'm wrong, but the state of Texas has vanity plates, and they were just given the authority by the Supreme Court to determine on their own as a state what they would allow and not allow on a vanity plate, whether it be something about children or something about the Confederate soldiers of America or what have you. They were given the authority that they don't have to use their right to freedom of speech on their own property, which is the license plate. Nor do I think we would have to in the future if someone came. But
correct. That's correct.
But if the donated good thing works the easiest without so much of an issue, I would be supportive of that as well. So.
Would it be a recommendation, Bill, that if we do decide to go that route, that particular, well, not ordinance, but council policy then be enacted first prior to allowing any donations, or?
It would make more sense to do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like I said, there was also actually, well, there was the one in '96, but Karen also found that back in 1999, when the council approved the Alzheimer Memorial Walkway through Bayview Park, that at that point in time, council directed that a council policy statement on the placement of structures on property be drafted as well, and I'm not sure why that didn't go through then either, but certainly, I mean, we should have a policy. We should be doing it consistently. It should be consistent no matter which group it is, no matter where they want it placed or whether they're donating it. So I think it makes sense for that. And really, we've got most of a policy already drafted here. So I don't think myself or Greg or anybody's really looked at this with a close eye.
A lot of that actually, if you read it, is zoning, is within our sign regulations, I believe. You know, because that's specific to signs. It's really not talking about monuments. It's signs. And a lot of that is covered, I think, within our sign regulations of our zoning ordinance. So I think we'd want to look at it a little more scrutiny in terms of if we're going to talk about, you know, monuments and other types of things.
And I don't know. I don't know. I guess it would just be my. I don't want to overregulate. I'm not so sure that I'm really in favor of making a policy that is going to that another council down the road is going to have an issue with if somebody else comes up, because if they'd have written that policy not knowing that one day, you know, the Peace Coalition would come by with their pole, or the monument for the veterans would have come up with the monument they wanted to put in Veterans Park or things like that, then we may be over-ordinancing things, for lack of a better term, I guess. So I would almost rather just give the council at that point in time the power to decide on their own whether they want to put up whatever it is that comes in front of them. The signs issue is, like Greg said, signs are a completely different thing. You can't put certain signs on city property, which is fine. We all know that from campaigning, but I don't know. I'm not really in a big hurry to. I think we can make this decision on this, and if something comes up in 5-6 years and the council wants to make a decision without a policy on that particular thing, I would rather give them the ability to do that. But that's just me.
But can we accept donations from the public to put things out if we don't have a policy that says that we accept them, and it's up to us to where we want to put them?
But if nothing says that we can't accept a donated piece, then why do we need a policy saying that we do accept it? Nothing says we can't, I guess would be. So if there's nothing out there that says that we can't accept the peace pole, then why would we write something that says that we can accept the peace pole?
Because without something saying that we're taking them as donations and it's up to the city to determine where they will be, we can't take the peace pole as a donation and then the next one be the same. Because how can we put that standard on the peace pole, say, okay, we'll take it as a donation, and then the city will determine where it goes, with no policy saying that that's our policy? Am I missing something?
There's no clear-cut law in Michigan that would hamstring you or require you to do this. I mean, I think you know, maybe the consensus of prior councils where maybe you're suggesting that why do we need a policy to do this? We can either do each one individually and let that particular council make a decision at that time. Maybe that's why they not necessarily failed to vote, but just never got brought back. And I don't know, I mean, I know some of the peace pole folks are here. I know they had a specific timeline. I think they wanted the city to make a decision because they had to order the pole and they wanted to get it up before World Peace Day, which is, I'm not sure the date, but yeah.
And I guess in its most simplest form, I see that, okay, the coalition comes to us and says, we would like to donate the peace pole, to the city of Alpena. We would like to have it on the city hall property, but we'd like to donate it, and you can put it wherever you recommend. We say, okay. We vote. We say, yep. We vote to accept the peace pole, and we put it in the language that we would like to have it erected on city property, and direct the engineering department to do so. And then 3 weeks from now, somebody else comes up and they say, yeah, I'd like to donate a war pole to the city and have it put on the city property, and we would vote on whether we would accept the war pole, and for argument's sake we say we vote no, that we would rather not accept the war pole, and then off they go. And if they want to say, well, you violated some law that says that you have to accept everything that's donated to you, you didn't treat me fairly, I'm telling you that the Supreme Court already said that governments don't have to abide by, they don't have to use the freedom of speech argument. They can form their own, regulate their own freedom of speech just as we can as individuals. So I just see it that simple. Yes, we can say yes on this one. We can say no on the next one. We can say yes on the third one, because that's what we do. That's what we were elected to do, vote. If we have an ordinance, the ordinance has now done the voting, not only for us, but for everybody that follows us. Because we made the decision by ordinance that we would only do that one particular thing. So I just kind of, I don't know, it just seems simpler to me than having to over-regulate. But that's just me.
I think it would work either way, honestly. Yeah. But I'm certainly comfortable with situational ethics as a person, and I think from listening to Bill that the city has a right to look at things situationally as well. So certainly don't have an issue with the peace pole, and I wouldn't even have an issue without the donation part of it. But that would certainly be okay with me. It's any reason why we can't look at it on an individual basis. If we need to have a policy that says we'll take donations and look at it on an individual basis, I mean, that's okay with me too. I think it would work in either light, but for these guys, we should probably just decide this, and then maybe we can discuss whether we need a policy about it in the future. Because the peace day is coming up, I'd be pretty comfortable to just sign off on their request now and continue that policy discussion if we have to.
I kind of mirrored the same thing that Shawn was saying too. Either way, I would be comfortable with this, but to me, it is important that we, at least on this particular situation here, vote and get this going for these folks and such. And I'm comfortable with either, but I truly believe that we can handle everything individually and situationally as well. So I agree with Shawn on that.
Bill, I guess my only suggestion might be, whether it's important, you can tell us, is if we accept it, it becomes our property. So we can, in essence, do what we want. I mean, we can set it out. If at some time in the future they want to take it out and put it in storage, we can do it. But also that it's our responsibility to maintain it. It's just like if somebody donated us a play structure, well, now we're going to, they said, I'll build it, I'll pay for it, but now it's yours. And then we maintain it, same type of thing. That way it is our property and our responsibility.
And we also have the right to say it's faded, dingy, and an eyesore, and so we're going to burn it.
Right, or remove it, do whatever, if it's outlived its useful life.
As long as that's clearly understood.
Oh, that sounds like war, doesn't it?
As long as you're there and keep it.
Well,
We won't be here to worry about it.
If it's a problem, we have no objections to having it removed, or you having it removed, or whatever. That's not the point of this confrontation. We know you got an oath with us.
Appreciate that. So entertain a motion.
Are they willing to?
And just because you're here and we're just, you've heard the discussion, do you have an issue with donating the pole to the city and working it that way?
No,
I have an issue with that.
I would like to think we'll work on the assumption that we'll try to honor their preference and not stick it behind a dumpster in a corner. We'll do the best we can.
Based on each situation.
Yeah.
Each situation, and I'm comfortable.
Probably put that in the language of the motion if you'd like, assuming someone's about to make one.
I move that we accept the peace poll and as a city property and with the staff to decide exactly the placement.
Second.
Noah?
Yes.
Sexton?
Yes.
Walagora?
Aye.
Johnson?
Yes.
Nielsen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. And staff, I'm sure you'll keep in contact with the team.
We have to put 4 languages on the poll. And is that our discretion?
Yeah, it's from your presentation the last time. We clearly understood that. Does council have an issue with?
No.
You're donating the poll, so you hook it up.
Just make one of them English.
One of them should be English.
One should be English.
Could we have English?
One will be English, Duffy? Okay. All right, thank you. On to E, resolution number 2015-06, a resolution to place dial-a-ride NKA Thunder Bay Transportation Authority millage request on the November 3rd, 2015 general election ballot.
Okay, in August 2006, the city of Alpena entered into an agreement with Thunder Bay Transportation Authority to maintain public transportation services within the city, both TBTA and dial-a-ride, and these would be run by TBTA. In particular, the following were agreed to by both parties. The city would provide to TBTA the full amount of the millage as approved and levied by the city for the purpose of providing demand response public transportation services within the current and any amended DART service area. TBTA and the city will review the millage rate to determine the continued need for the millage and the proposed rate. If the millage is determined to be necessary for the continued effective and efficient operation of the service, the city will place the millage proposal on the ballot. And TBTA will operate routes and provide service that are conducive to the transportation needs of city residents and maintain system hours and fare structure within the service area that were in effect at the time of the agreement. The current 4-year direct operating millage of 0.65 mil levied by the city expires this year. For the current year, it is estimated that the millage will generate approximately $150,000 in revenue for the authority. These funds may only be used to support the operation of DART, so it is not at all. It's not used at all for Thunder Bay's either out county for Alpena or in the other 2 counties that are part of our service area, Alcona or Mount Morenci. It's only used within the dial-a-ride service area to provide that service. These funds provide approximately 25% of the overall operating budget of DART. The fare structure has remained at the level in effect at the time of the TBTA DART merger at $1.50 for the full fare, 75 cents for child, senior, and disabled. Also, it was when we merged that the rates for city residents, no matter where they went, so if they went outside the city to Walmart, now Meijer, whatever, was still the reduced fare. That was part of the agreement between the city and Thunder Bay if they were going to get the millage. And that has been honored and is in effect. The fare box generates only about 12 to 15% of the system's revenue. The maintenance of the DART system has long been viewed as a quality of life issue with the general citizenry and the electorate of the city. Consequently, support of the millage is considered more important than increases in fares, which would impact those that most desperately need the service but have limited resources to absorb fare increases. In fact, we have been told by various voters that if we raise fares, they vote against the millage because by raising fares, and it's not to say we're never going to raise fares, but any significant increase would directly impact the people who utilize the service the most, whereas and it's been shown, we've had, I don't remember, can I get into it, how many millages, and they've been overwhelmingly approved every time because people see this as a value to the community. Since 2007, DART has seen its ridership increase by over 35%. So we have seen a steady growth every year. In the 2014 fiscal year, over 92,000 passengers were served, and these numbers are expected to surpass 95,000 this year. Of this ridership, over 85% are city residents, and 3/4 are reduced fare riders. Since 1975, there have been 11 DART millage requests, all of which have been overwhelmingly approved by the Alpena electorate, a clear reflection of the value the community has placed on DART and the service it provides. Once again, TBETA respectfully requests that council support Dial-A-Ride by the placement of a 4-year millage renewal at the current rate of 0.65 mil per year on the November 3rd, 2015 general election ballot by the adoption of resolution number 2015-06.
Want me to read that resolution? It's like 3 pages long.
Yeah, and most of it is just telling each time there was a millage.
Right.
And it was put on and approved in each year for how many years, and what the years were that it was approved.
No real sense in reading that whole thing.
No, it is estimated in 2016 of around 155,500 as far as revenue that would be generated. And this is a renewal, so it's not, even though the millage always says to increase the charter limit be increased by this millage. It's not an increase. This is simply a renewal, so it's not a new tax, but one that's been there since the 1970s.
I move we approve resolution number 2015-06.
Second.
Sexton?
Yes.
Walagora?
Aye.
Johnson?
Yes.
Nielsen?
Yes.
Noah?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Greg. F, 2015-16, service agreement between the City of Alpena and Michigan Arts and Culture Northeast, known as MACNY.
Okay, the council in adopting the 2015-16 budget did include $5,000 for MACNY to assist in the development of materials and programming for the marketing promotion of the Lake Huron Discovery Tour, October 9th through the 12th of this year. What we have done is put together a modified, using the Target services agreement that we have and is coming up again and have used for several years now, modifying it in order to put in writing what is expected of both parties as part of the service agreement. Besides what I just said as far as marketing and promotion, when they made their presentation that a small portion of the funding will also provide general operating expenses incurred by MACNY in doing this and in other marketing efforts. The proposed agreement specifies the eligibility criteria for projects to receive funding, monitoring requirements, and the payment process. The agreement, as I said, utilizes Target Services Agreement as a template. These agreements have been effective tools for both the city and the funding recipient, with specific tasks and benchmarks clearly defined. Accountability is provided through a required final written report, as well as a report presented to council and the public at a meeting following the completion of all city-related projects or the termination of this agreement. Overall, the formalized relationship established under a service agreement works very well for both parties. Tim Kuhnlein, MACNY Board President, is authorized to sign the agreement. I'd ask him to stay after the meeting, and we'll get his signature on there. I said it's already done, so I intended to do it before the meeting, but it just didn't happen. So it will occur after the meeting. Consequently, staff recommends approval of the attached services agreement and requests authorization for the mayor and the city clerk to sign on the city's behalf.
I think I mentioned before, and this was brought up, that I'm happy to see the city support, development that's not just economic and industrial, and to look at arts and culture and tourism and everything else that we can do here to diversify and improve our economy. So, good group of people, good passionate group, and I'm happy to support it.
entertain a motion to enter into the service agreement.
So
As written.
moved. I'm sorry, so moved.
Second.
Was that Cindy? or-
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't looking.
Our Mike's having issues.
Walagora?
Aye.
Johnson?
Yes.
Nielsen?
Yes.
Noah?
Yes.
Sexton?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next up, 2015-16 service agreement between the City of Alpena and Alpena Area Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Okay, this is the same basic agreement as the one just approved. Again, for $5,000, that was included in the city budget. And this is funding to assist in the implementation of branding-related projects. And once again, it covers the same thing, the eligibility of criteria for projects. And for both MACNY and the CVB, it was that the funds are spent on projects that directly impact the city. If they are on a broader scale, on a wider plane than just the city, that they at least be proportional. Whatever funding we put in is proportional to the benefit to the city. And so they will have to, show that, demonstrate it for the funding to be authorized and approved. And basically, that's it. Everything else is the same as what I said earlier regarding MACNY. Mary Beth Stutzman, who's the CVB President and CEO, again, is authorized to sign. She would have signed it earlier if I got it with her. So we will do that after the meeting, and then we're asking the mayor and that you approve it, and then the mayor and the council to sign, or the mayor and the clerk sign it.
Good.
I move we approve the service agreement with the CVB.
Second.
Johnson?
Yes.
Nielsen?
Yes.
Noah?
Yes.
Sexton?
Yes.
Walagora?
Aye. Thank you. Okay, 2015-16 service agreement between the City of Alpena and Target Alpena Development Corporation.
Okay, I'm not sure how many of these we have done, but it's been a number. And it's, this is, in this case, is relative to the $40,000 that was budgeted by the city. And I will make a clarification. Actually, it was brought to my attention, and we did look. The budget says $42,000. It is 40. That's what was. Sorry, Jim, you're only getting 40, not 42.
Just like that.
Yeah.
Find a place for it.
That was an error. That was a typo. So it is 40,000. That's what's in the agreement. And it's basically very similar. It has a scope of services because they do a much broader range of activities than these others, which are very specific. A separate scope of services is included. And again, it's worked well. There are benchmarks, reporting requirements, and in fact, Jim will be up immediately after this is acted upon to give the year-end report for Target to the city. So with that, I would ask for approval of the agreement.
Target, Alpena, and Jim Claridge have probably done more for this community since I've sat here than anybody can think of. So I certainly think it's an investment that's paid off for us, and be happy to continue that.
I agree. All three, money well spent.
Agreed.
I move we approve the service agreement between the City of Alpena and Target Alpena Development Corporation.
Second.
Nielsen?
Yes.
Noah?
Yes.
Sexton?
Yes.
Walagora?
Aye.
Johnson?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And as Greg said, next up, communications and petitions. Target Alpena Development Corporation, June 2015 report.
You can't give bad news now.
No.
You know, we
No
should have
bad
flipped
news
this
today.
around.
Yeah, that should have been first.
I'll make it easy today. Hey, so if you look around town, I guess you're starting to see some of the fruits of our labors taking shape. With Myers opening, MC Sports opening, you'll see the hotel under construction. A bit late, but it is still moving forward, inching forward. So it's pretty neat to see those things. If you take a look around, the overall economy continues to improve. We continue, Alpena County, to post the lowest unemployment rates in the Northeast Michigan region, Region 3, as well as the highest rate of private sector investment in Northeast Michigan.
You'll see extensions of that all over town. You'll see new restaurants opening, new small businesses opening on Second. Those are all extensions of the things that are going on at a broader scale. Small Business Development Center consulting and our loan activities have been slow, a lot slower than they have been in the past. I'm really blaming that a little bit on our low unemployment rates, at being at 5.7 in April, and I think reported at 6.3 in June. And that's in June when everybody comes out of school and starts looking for a job. That's pretty low. It's pretty significant. In 2015, we provided one loan for a business startup and another for a large-scale business expansion. Our counseling hours were similar to last year. Client numbers were similar. Capital formation was just a lot lower. So what that means really is the people that, from a client standpoint and business startup rate, they brought a lot more money with them, and they didn't need it. So that's really what you'll see in those metrics. I also put in the section in the report for you that at the present time, we estimate right now in Alpena County around 140 positions that are available. I think I looked at it on Indeed.com today. It was around 161, I think is what they said. Roughly about 30, 40, 50 of those are professional in nature. We're really looking at creative ways that we can address that to a certain degree, and that is, the hospital recruits outside of the area. A lot of manufacturing guys recruit outside of the area. There's a lot of that going on, and do we play a role, some way, shape, or form in that by taking a look at how do we market ourselves, and that kind of thing. So you'll see us putting a little or taking a look at what we look like and what our role should be in that over the next year. Our business recruitment activities continue in earnest. We're working on some new opportunities. There's probably a few that we hope become reality a little bit later this year. And our relationships and visibility with corporate site selectors and corporate real estate companies continues to grow, and their confidence in our abilities, I think, and most importantly, continues to grow. We started laying out the business development section for Alpena Community Profiles piece as outlined in the branding initiative. We recently completed a draft of that and turned it in to the Branding Alliance for the review. Another section, as Adam discussed earlier, we've been working with the city on several projects, including the Redevelopment Ready Communities grant, on which we're really exploring the revitalization opportunities on one and possibly two underutilized buildings downtown. We're working with the DDA's Economic Development Committee specifically on the procurement of a target market analysis. And the data generated from that will really help us in recruiting the appropriate businesses, help to stabilize our occupancy rates, and ultimately provide any small business in our area with the best chance at long-term success, making sure that that they're right fit. They're the right fit in the right place. There's a couple points that I'd be remiss in not reporting to you concerning downtown, and that's back in '97 and 2003. The city and the DDA, as I saw, procured studies that recommended changes that would increase commerce in the city. In 2012, Roger Brooks' branding assessment of Alpena identified the same weakness, and just a few weeks ago we had Peter Allen here on a couple of occasions from the MEDC and U of M. And he really they all outlined the same recommendation, and that was remove our one-way streets and implement two-way traffic. I realize that causes a lot of people alarm, or to become alarmed, but I want to share a couple of things that I've learned kind of over the past few years from the national retailers and commercial real estate developers. While they look at a considerable amount of data, the most important data they really look at are traffic counts, regional population, and trade areas. If we apply that thought process towards the development in and around different parts of the city, the idea of one-way streets that by nature limit the amount of traffic that you have by half and are designed to move traffic swiftly aren't necessarily a good recipe for long-term commercial success. So I understand from Greg and talking to Rich and some other folks that is going to be examined pretty soon. I said in keeping with that, we may want to take a look at how our parking, how does it fit right now? How would that parking fit with two-way traffic? Maybe it's the same, maybe it's different, but maybe look at are we providing, are we accommodating the largest demographic, I guess, as possible based on what we want to accomplish, and that's kind of where I thought our heads would go with that. In keeping with what Adam touched on earlier too, is that since the city is more of a candidate for redevelopment, it is new development, I kind of looked at it and said, we should really look at things on a broad, a longer vision, maybe that's 5 years, maybe that's 10 years, and decide what do we want it to look like, and take that first couple of steps. And that might mean rezoning, or taking a look at if we are zoned correctly, if we should have hotels and different types of developments in certain parts of the city, or target certain parts of the city for those type of developments. That's the kind of vision that we hope to be working on with the city in the future. Our work in the unmanned aerial systems project continues. There is light at the end of the tunnel. We'll probably servicing the first customer here in the next month or two. We're also working with Alpena Community College in its efforts to create an unmanned aerial systems curriculum, and we're also investigating the possibility of complementary business and training opportunities from the whole of the unmanned systems initiative. So in closing, I'd just like to say that we're confident that we'll see continued growth and increased economic activity in 15 and 16. And thank you for your support the past year, and looking forward to this year.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any questions?
Every day.
Just a comment, with the rest of the council, it's a privilege for me to serve on the board with Jim. I know for firsthand experience how tirelessly he works on behalf of this community, and he goes late hours, early mornings, endless meetings and stuff like that. And it's a pleasure serving with you, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Do we file and restore? Nothing at all? Thanks, Jim. We don't have to ask on that. New business, the HVAC control design at the public safety building.
At the last meeting, when we authorized the contract for the air handler units, I'd mentioned that we would be looking at coming back with design services for the control system. Next step in the process is to have the new control system designed based on an open protocol. By that I mean I don't have to have ABC firm come up here and service it. I can have anybody services. It's not proprietary. And that's what we have right now is a proprietary system. Presently, that system does not work. The computer that it resides in has failed. We have tried. Mike Kalashevsky's been working with the county IT folks and others to try to get that resurrected. Right now it's kind of operating piecemeal. We have, as my understanding, just one air handler working over there. And so we're limping by, like I said, until we can get the new air handlers in. Along with this comes the control system. The control system is really going to optimize the efficiency of the entire system. The price from AKT Peerless to provide those design services, the specifications, and to assist us through the bidding is $4,820. And they will also prepare the energy efficiency rebates that we may be eligible for through this program, or through the energy efficiency program of the state. It's my recommendation the city engineer and the city council approve the change order and authorize the cost to be deducted from the public safety building construction fund. So this is under $5,000. Normally, we could handle it internally, but because it does access those funds that were committed, we do need council's authorization to spend that money. Once the design's done, then we'll go out for bid for the actual control package, and then we will bring that control package cost back to city council for your ultimate approval.
And that's the last piece of the pie for that system, right?
Yes.
For that building.
To get the system up and running. There's other energy efficiency elements that we can do, and I believe Mike is going to pursue those, but those are low ticket, low budget activities, closing off some dampers that are allowing cold air to come in year round, etc.
that are things that can be done, you know, for $500 here or $1,000 there, but these are the last big ticket items.
Okay.
Is it fair to say that the benefit of this is that it allows us to maintenance it ourselves or find local people to do it?
Yeah, I can have Weinkauf, Lakeshore, any of the local, and I'm not trying to exclude anybody, but those are the ones that came to mind. Any of the local HVAC contractors work on it without having to bring somebody from Saginaw in to do it.
I move we approve the change order and authorize the cost to be deducted from the Public Safety Building Construction Fund.
Second.
Nowak?
Yes.
Sexton?
Yes.
Walagora?
Aye.
Johnson?
Yes.
Nielsen?
Yes.
I move we adjourn to closed session.
Second.
Sexton?
Yes.
Walagora?
Aye.
Johnson?
Yes.
Nielsen?
Yes.
Nowak?
Yes.
You are watching All About Alpena.